All right. Good morning. I am so excited to be introducing Tina Putney. We actually met on a Facebook conversation. I was actually reaching out to her. I'd seen that she had done some fun things on Facebook, and I went, I want to talk to this lady. And so we got into a conversation on parenting. Really, we connected right away on that gentle parenting and having tools to kind of interrupt some of our generational habits. And I was so inspired, Tina, when I heard your story. I was like, oh my goodness, more people need to know about this. So not only did you come from a space of a mental health diagnosis, but also generational trauma that was when you first had your son, kind of keeping you stuck in some reactions that you weren't comfortable with. So what was inspiring to me was that you self-reported that, and that you really wanted help and you didn't really know how to change things, but you were just like, I need help and this is not the picture I want. And then sadly, the system took your child. So tell me, I'd love to start with kind of that story, and then we'll go into the tools that you bring to parents now. And then just anyone, even if you're not a parent, being able to recognize when you're in one of those generational cycles where your behavior is not something that you really want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a really, really difficult time. I felt really alone and kind of begged my husband not to leave me alone with our son because I knew what I was capable of. And so I kind of felt like I wasn't really heard and just kind of alone in that and didn't really have anybody to ask for help. So triggers are crying. When my child cries, that's what triggered me. Because when I was growing up, I couldn't cry. I couldn't show that I was weak. I couldn't show really emotions. So when emotions have been shown, it's confusing. It's kind of disorienting. So when my child explained or displayed his, I got angry. Um, when they took him away, the good thing is that we actually knew where he was. He was with our neighbors next door, so he wasn't too far, and we worked really well with them, so we could see him pretty frequently. But yeah, it was like every single time we had to take him back to them, my heart just like completely broke. And I was like, well, it should get easier with time, but it absolutely did not. It was just hard the whole time through. But I worked really, really hard. Did all the county like recommendations. I had to go to therapy, marriage counseling, medication, all of that. And I did all of that. And they gave us back our son January of 2016. So yeah.
What a huge accomplishment. So tell me a little bit about going, what was kind of the turning point where you were able to stop? And I don't think we stop having our triggers or reactions necessarily. I think they lessen, right? But what were the tools and the skills that you developed that shifted that for you the most?
Yeah, let me throw the share screen on and then I
Yeah.
can what kind of got going on here. So as you can see, anger is pretty much the top of the iceberg. But that means that there are so many underlying emotions that are underneath that as parents, I always say that anger is always a secondary emotion, which means that, there's regret, there's overwhelmed, there's offended, there's disappointed, there's all these emotions that the child is feeling beyond that. And our job is to realize that behavior is the result of unmet feelings, unmet needs from the child. So, they're communicating to us something isn't right. I'm not okay with this. And I need your help. So the tantrums are really their body being so dysregulated that they can't just kind of control their emotions. And so that is their cry for our help. A lot of times parents will, well, stop crying or stop, it's not a big deal. Like kind of get over it. If you don't stop, then you're going to go to your room, kind of punish them. But we, in the power and parenting model, we shy away from that because that's not getting to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is probably that unmet need, unmet feeling. So our job as parents is to be the emotional detectives, which means that we would ask questions like, how are you feeling right now? And if we can see the anger rising, we can say, wow, you look like you're really frustrated right now. Do you want to talk about that? Because the sooner that we can stop the escalation, the more that our child will feel safe to come to us in different times. And it also helps us to regulate, because when we can regulate ourselves and when we can give ourselves emotional vocabulary, that helps us, that helps our brain to kind of rewire. And if you grew up in a home that, emotions were not given a voice, this Anger Iceberg allows you to do that. There's other kind of tools that I teach, but this is the one that I think is the most kind of prevalent, because we see these emotional outbursts all the time in our kids for whatever reason. I mean, an example is like when you're trying to explain to your child that you can't give them a cookie before dinner, they melt down. But before the meltdown, you can start to hear their voice start to rise. You can start to like kind of hear this anger is rising. And if you can catch it before it gets to this big escalated state, then the tantrum itself will probably still happen, but it'll happen to a lesser degree. And so that's the big thing, is that we have to just kind of be there for our children. And it's all about showing up. And if there's like a home that has one parent that's more attuned to the emotions and not the other, it only takes one parent to show up for a child to still be secure in their identity and just in their emotional language. So this is a really good tool to give emotional vocabulary to kids and to parents alike that haven't had that. And just kind of asking those questions, those curiosity questions is what we call them. Like, are you feeling disappointed right now? Are you feeling scared? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Are you feeling sad? And sometimes they can answer, and sometimes we just kind of have to guess. And if we guess the wrong thing, it's okay. We can totally guess the wrong thing, and then they will tell us, no, I'm not this, I'm feeling this. Okay. So those conversations can start to become a little bit more natural when you kind of given the child and even yourself a little bit of room to kind of investigate how you're feeling. So what I primarily do in my program is I work a lot with generational trauma. Also, I foster inner healing. So I like advise the parents that I work with to do inner healing. I encourage them to, I even show them a couple inner healing ways that they can utilize. And then also I teach them these emotional regulation skills that I learned when I was going through my whole healing journey. And so it's been a journey, but I love it. And there are parents that have definitely benefited from the emotional regulation skills and the other skills that I've learned in my program. This one I learned from my parent coach, but because my practice is called Coming to the Lighthouse, of course, I have to have a little bit of ocean and boats in it. So
I love it. Well, and I love this too, that it really helps you kind of identify, anger being that secondary emotion, what's the primary emotion, and giving some words to that. And it could be even some simple needs aren't met, like I'm really hungry. My daughter gets really angry.
Nope. Yep.
And then it also is really awesome for me to look at this, because anger was the only accepted emotion growing up with my stepdad, and not anger from me. His anger was the only thing that he expressed, right? Other than that, it was very kind of blank emotions, if that makes sense. So anger being this only acceptable emotion, I think that also is not just my experience, but that's the only okay emotion for boys, right, that I've noticed. And so this is helpful even for hubbies or, family members to be able to go, okay, you're angry. That's not at me. What's the secondary emotion underneath that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, boys definitely have this like more macho, like, in society, they're supposed to be more macho. They're not supposed to show emotions. But I mean, my boys are pretty emotionally in tuned, and they can express their emotions and they can talk about it. because, we've given them the vocabulary. And I think it's so important, especially for boys, to give them that emotional vocabulary so that they can say, here's what I'm feeling. Because a lot of times they just have to stuff it down, right? And even us, women, we are taught to be, kind of stoic or emotional. We're the nurturers, right? But we can't like take on other people's emotions, but we do naturally just because we're nurturers. And we also could use emotional vocabulary. I think everybody really could. So
yeah, I almost feel like anger is not quite accepted in women.
yeah.
And so then it becomes internalized and then becomes that state of overwhelm. Now,
Right.
so there's overwhelm right there in the iceberg.
Yep.
Would you show your children this diagram and say, I'm seeing these things up here, but what's going on underneath?
I don't really show them the diagram. It's a good idea to show them, but I've just kind of talked about it more like so I want to share a story. So my now 5-year-old, very newly minted 5-year-old, he just graduated 4K last week. It was
Oh, cute.
so good. It was so good. He one night was really upset because dad left for work and he was taking a nap and he didn't get to say goodbye. And, usually he said a joke to him before. So we kind of like realized that he needed to have some transition time. And he was very upset that night. And this was when I was going into the program with my parent coach. That's how I got into the certified parent coaching. And so otherwise I would have probably tried to get him to calm down because, I was getting a little dysregulated myself. But that night I just kept saying, I know you're sad. I know that you're sad that dad left and that, this makes you really, really upset. And I just kept saying that. I just kept validating him. And I could tell you that he absolutely got that I got him. And it was like tantrum still happened. He was still crying, but I could see in his physical body that he was relaxing. And then he actually like sat down in my lap and I got to hold him and just like cuddle him and, make sure that he was safe. And that is the moment that I'm like, oh, I've got to do this. Like, I've got to help other parents.
So a turning point there as well to see that. And that's so empowering too, when you feel like you have that true connection and they get that the message that they're supported and it'll be okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's the hard thing for us parents. And I don't know if you have more to share, or we can stop our share here.
Just kind of where you can find me.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. Let's do that before we have any technical difficulties. We can write that down and then we'll put that in the comments in the link here.
Sure. So I have a Facebook page. It's called Come to the Lighthouse. And then I have a Facebook group. I can put all the links down later, but Instagram, I'm at Lighthouse Come. I'd love you to follow me, find me on there. I have a YouTube channel that shows you these emotion regulation skills. And also I have my live trainings from Facebook on there as well. You can find me on LinkedIn and I even have TikTok. So you can find me.
Awesome. I love it. You're on all of it.
So I can stop the share if you want. And we can.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just, there's a couple other questions I have. So I love that with these skills and that, really kind of feeling into that empowerment. This is always the burning question, right? And something you said earlier was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Is that it only takes one parent, because oftentimes, especially when I don't know if this is like your reality as well, but when you first get married, you're a different person. And then when you have children, you grow into this other person. And oftentimes there's this push-pull with dad that's like, well, you're not the same as when, we first got married. And as a mom, you just develop into, my husband calls it mama bear, where it's, the child is more important, you're on the back burner. So I found myself sometimes frustrated when dad wasn't coming along with some of these ideas. Right.
Right.
And then I would get into this worry and be triggered myself that any anger or those things would have the same effect as it did on me. So tell me a little bit about that. Being able to, how has it been with your husband kind of coming along with these tools as well?
Yeah. It's been a challenge. We have different like parenting styles. So he's more along the lines of like technology, and so the kids have screens more with him. I'm not, I like to get him outside. I like to get him playing and socializing. Um, so the empowering thing is that you can tell the difference in how we're talking to them. I will try to, include the emotions and stuff. And I'm not saying that he doesn't, it's just
Mhm.
I'm more primary. I feel like I teach them emotions a lot more, and that vocabulary, and just trying to see who they are. And then he wants to kind of hang out with them and play with them. And, so I think we're doing things a little differently, but I think it's working. So they're getting both.
Well, and I think that's nice to know too, that, even the one, and I've actually heard it as the sympathetic witness, right? Even one person that feels and validates with the child can make a big difference. So, and my husband's come a long way now. He loves the Love and Logic series. He went from the authoritarian parent and drill sergeant to like
Yeah.
trying to be the consultant as much as possible. And I went from the helicopter parent to, from rescue mode to trying to be in the middle of that consultant as well. Um, but to be able to kind of step back and go, okay, it's not me having to be in charge of how my husband is doing it.
Mhm.
It's just me being in charge of me. So
Yeah.
that was really a cool message too. I
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so
And I'm
good.
excited to follow your page where you have some more of those tools, because even just this one tool, I think can be really life-changing for people. And then just grab on to that one tool that they use consistently.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we feel like it's really complicated, or we don't want to start something that's new because we're overwhelmed by all the steps.
Right. Right. This is really simple. It's just a really simple check-in, like how am I feeling right now? I'm feeling frustrated. Okay.
Mhm.
Why am I feeling frustrated? Where is this coming from? And then just kind of working through that. And then once you work through that, then you can approach the situation a lot calmer, because you
Mhm.
work through that, you've gone through your trigger, you know where it comes from, and now you can now respond in a different way. Because okay, I don't have to respond like that though. um that's key. That's
Now,
key.
do you do something as you're saying you're working through it, you drill down and you find exactly where it's coming from? Do you have a technique that you do to kind of release that or process that?
Yeah, I have a little motto. I say that's not my world anymore. And that has stopped so much like intrusive thoughts. There's times where, so PTSD, you reoccurringly remember certain events and stuff. And I could feel like I was in two places. Like I knew physically I was here with my family, Chippewa Falls, but I felt like I was back in my house that I grew up in. And it was terrifying. Um, so I would say when that kind of happened, I would say that's not my world anymore. And within seconds, I was back here mentally, physically, everything. It was just that quick little motto. And I mean, if we can find those quick little mottos, honestly, it just rewires our brain to see our situation in a different light, and then snaps us back. It
I love
does
that.
take time. It does take time. I will say that, but
Mhm.
take the time now. It's really important.
Mhm.
Also, something else to note, it is never too late to work on your relationship with your children. Absolutely never. We have people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are working on relationship with their kids in our certification program that I graduated from.
That's awesome.
Never too late. Never.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so healing. And some people don't ever get that opportunity. So that's amazing. I love that. I love that so much. I have a little motto: up until now.
Yeah.
That was how it was for me. And being able to say, and I that's part of the reason I really wanted to have you come and speak, because it's so inspiring to say, you went from a place of like, some people would just give up on themselves, right? And just be like, well, I'm broken, or I don't deserve to be a parent, or what have you. And
Mhm.
that was the pattern interrupt that you broke and were able to change, to be the cycle breaker in your family, which is
Right.
amazing.
Right. No, it's not.
So last but not least, tell us about your hat. I loved what you explained to me. Yes.
A parent coach with the cap. That is my little hashtag and my little way of like knowing me.
Yeah.
My marketing coach he's wonderful. He and I came onto a Zoom with my cap one day and like earrings and like I have a little shirt that is for my practice. He's like, oh my gosh, this is your look. This is your look here. I'm like, okay. So I think it's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
And I bought some more caps so I can re-switch
Change
out.
it up. I love it. That's cute. Well,
Yeah.
and I love too that you're like kind of like, you put a little cap on it, and like just being able to recap all of this in such a short amount of time and to give such a powerful tool, I think is amazing. And I'm super grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Love
appreciate
it.
it.
Well, with that, I will stop the recording and we'll go into Q&A. Thanks again, Tina.
Absolutely. I can put my link